Good evening. It's July, mid-July, and welcome to Poets Time. It's been quite a while since we've done one. And that's because COVID is, well, it's back in the rise again, but it's maybe less dangerous than it was. So we're out doing our, introducing our poets at various venues. Scotland is awash with people out there doing their poetry. And that includes my evening in Avant-Garde, which is monthly and has been very successful again, and that's been great. But it's not always possible to get people from around, so I thought we would do another one, and I'm really fortunate that we've got with us a girl whose work I've just published, a fabulous book. This is Kimberley Petrie from Aberdeen. Kimberley works the blood transfusion service, and I saw her when I was up in Aberdeen perform. Just thought, what a performer, and also the work. It was astounding. So hello, Kimberley.
Hello, lovely to be here.
So would you love to show our audience your fabulous Granite Heart? Look at that. Wow. So it's funny when you get someone sending you a collection of poetry and you know them, and then you go through it and it's just quite a lot you learn about that person somehow. You feel as if it's poetry is like a window into the person's soul. So this is a beautiful soul that deserves and has been through quite a lot and has now landed big time on her feet. So I'm going to pass you over now to Kimberley, and she's going to read a few of her poems, and then we'll have a little chat after that. So over to you now, Kimberley.
Thanks, Linda. This one is called Skate Raw Sunset, and it's basically about where I stay, because I stay we just moved to a little sort of fishing village beside what's in Newton Hill in Aberdeenshire. So we moved there in September, and before I was never really much of a sort of writer about my surroundings, really, always a bit more political, but yeah, since moving here I just think it's beautiful. So this is Skate Raw Sunset. Flamingo, salmon and coral pinks skim the sapphire sea. Frothy waves lather, submerge stones, then open jaws to swallow the land. Dolphins dance through the icy blue as a starling murmuration casts playful, dark, swirling shadows across the evening sky. And this one is called Here's What I Remember. And this was in a very difficult period of my life. Here's what I remember. I remember salty tears in rain-soaked Amsterdam, solitary sitting in a Barcelona bar, Paris being loveless, standing alone at midnight in Venice, the silent treatment in Chicago, a clenched fist in New York. And I remember thinking, it does not matter where we go, there is no love here. And this one is one that I think a lot of women especially can identify with, and it's called Imposter Syndrome. I live in constant terror that my life has been some sort of clerical error, that a nasty official looking chap in a black bowler hat will rat-a-tat-tat on my front door to say that my carefully crafted life is a sham, a joke, a lie. How sad to often feel that nothing you achieve is ever real, that deep down you don't deserve applause because you're just a fraud in reality. This fear of mine is deep-rooted, that everything within my sphere, even degrees and my career, are all cause for jeers and ridicule from my peers. I have sleepless nights. I sometimes wonder how I got away with it for so long.
Yeah. Brilliant. I love these poems. I just love these poems, and it's been so good just to hear you reading them. And yeah, I'm thinking I was going to go back. What did you mean when you were saying there? I think that's interesting, that idea of imposter syndrome. It doesn't matter how intelligent you are or what you've achieved. And you were saying, I think sometimes I've found anyway that women can identify with that.
Yeah.
How do you think that is?
No, well, I don't know. I just think it's one of those things. I think that women do remarkable things all the time, and yet we still seem to think that it's some kind of fluke, or that it's just, you know, oh, it's happened, but oh God, you know, it's been something that hasn't been really achieved. And I don't know. I think a lot of the times we don't really own how good we really are. There's that saying about oh Lord, grant me the confidence of a mediocre white man. And I just think it's so true, because you know, women can be fantastic, and a lot of the time they're just like, oh God, you know, don't know if this is really for me. Whereas, you know, a lot of other people walk about and they think that they're fantastic, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting because I've been at women's conferences and, you know, women's studies conferences, and, you know, thankfully there's can be quite a few men there.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, everybody knows that situation without having a go at men in general here. I think it is often the case at these events. Well, I know it because we taped it. You know, a huge proportion of the things that were being said about women's studies, women's issues, were said by the men in the group, who were only two of them. But quite often they will speak more. As you say, women maybe don't own. I mean, but I think they're getting there now. I mean, a lot of women are. But I think it's that kind of owning, you know, men will own even that space and vocalize, and, you know, and you just want to say and point. And if I'm running it, I'll say to the women. So what do you think? You know, because you realise that men will quite often feel more confident. I mean, I presume it must just be part of the whole patriarchal order thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot to do with that. And like I say, the idea that, you know, women a lot of the time, or certainly in my experience and with friends that I've got, a lot of the time it doesn't matter how much hard work you seem to put into something, still when you are rewarded for it, you'll think that it's some sort of fluke, or that it's not really deserved. You know, I don't know why we've got this feeling, because you know, we shouldn't, but it's one of those things. And I do still think somebody's going to come to the door and tell me that, you know, actually I didn't get my degrees, and that, you know,
well, you know, I mean, when I hear the poem you read before that, you know, the one about, it's really a poem to me of extreme loneliness in a relationship. You know, the poem of being in Amsterdam and being in Paris and all these different places, where I think, you know, perhaps if women have suffered within a relationship, it's quite hard to gather your confidence or believe in yourself for quite a while after that, you know. And if you're in a society anyway where, you know, you hear it still, just jokes and the way, you know, women can be viewed, and then you get into that situation that you described, you know, that's just like being crushed again. So, because I'm sure there'd be a lot of verbal nonsense as well, you know, before the punch. So these things obviously just take the floor away from you. So it's hard to believe the floor is yours.
Yeah, that's
you
true.
know, and it's great to see you on it now. But so that was a beautiful poem. I mean, sad as it was, but all these places, and it seems to just build up, build up, build up.
Yeah. And it's funny because even when I was thinking about it, like I just was going through different places that we'd been, and it seemed to be that every place that we went, you know, like another thing was ticked off the list. And you're right, it did get, you know, more and more and more. And it starts off with, you know, being left alone in a bar, and then, you know, sort of things not being romantic when they really should be, and then the silent treatment and things, and it does just sort of escalate. And yeah, and it was that feeling of thinking, well, you know, look at all the fabulous places that I've been to in the world, and yet, you know, there was no love.
Yeah, yeah. So these, I mean, that's the great contrast there, I think, when you take, because a lot of the places are romantic destinations. So there's a desperation there, whether in the couple or one of them trying to look for forgiveness, or one of them thinking this might work. But as you say, at the end of the day, that's done, you know.
Yeah.
Glad you got there. Anyway, but and Skate Row, well, I know that you're very happily ensconced in a lovely relationship now. I've been up where you live and walked around that place. So, oh my heavens, you know, and you've captured it beautifully, you know, just that light when you go up there to the cliff and everything. So when you said you don't, that was interesting, you know. I think you're very politically motivated in your work, and and I think we have that thing, you read the romantic poets describing a place and you think, we almost feel it's in some way a wee bit couthy or something like that, you know. You can, whereas that's one of the most beautiful poems in the collection, I think. Just it's real poetics, I felt. So what I mean, is it, have you done things like that since, after starting those kind of poems?
Yeah, I have actually. And it's funny because, like I say, it's not something that I was ever really that comfortable writing before. And then obviously when I did that one, and it was just a sort of culmination of everything that I'd seen in a sort of day, was dolphins and then this starling murmuration and just it being absolutely stunning. And yeah, ever since then, I've just, every time I've been out and I'm seeing different things, and I've actually sort of befriended a group of the local women who run the Skate Row Hall. So they're wonderful ladies, and they've got a little group where they speak about the history of Skate Row and things. So that's been really influential as well. So I'm writing about the shipwreck that happened, and just all these different stories about fisherwomen used to carry their husbands on their backs to get them out to the boats and things, stuff that I just can't believe.
Well, I mean, there's a pamphlet waiting to come out, Kimberley. I mean, you could do a pamphlet just on Skate Row itself, the history,
Yeah.
everything. I mean, it sounds fantastic. Well, good. Well, we could chat forever, as we know, but I'm going to go back and let you read another 2 or 3 poems for us. It would be wonderful if you could.
Yeah, no, that would be lovely.
I can't wait.
Let me just see. So this was one that was, well, we can discuss it later, but it's called After I'm Gone. We had a hypothetical conversation. I said, if I died tomorrow, I wouldn't want you to move on or be happy with somebody else. You thought I was joking. I was not. For I want this to be the greatest love you have ever felt. If I go tomorrow, I want you to feel me constantly, for the memory of me to haunt you with irritating frequency. Like a piece of grit you can never quite get out of your eye, or the intense pain of a stubbed toe. A bump on your funny bone that lingers, or an itch you can never quite scratch. I want you to feel me like the constant nip of a paper cut, or the dull throb of toothache, a thirst you can never quite quench. I want you to feel me like an ulcer on the side of your tongue, or a blister that you think is healed only to make its presence known again, like a broken bone that remembers the cold, or like a hangover you think will never end. Because I know if I lost you, the memory of you would penetrate every part of my day, and I'd be grateful for it, no matter how much it hurt. And this one is called Fun. Teetering, tottering, stumbling, stottering, slurring speech as hands reach for another drink as we think we'll sink just one more drink. We're on the brink between fun and danger. This could be a game changer. Always looking for that first high to reach the sky, but no matter how hard we try or how many shots we buy, we just can't achieve that dopamine flush, that feeling, that rush of receptors firing, rewards of pleasure, try again, increase the measure, still endeavor, we'll reach that treasure, but it never comes. So you put it down to another night of fun. Your mission feels half completed. You call it a night feeling cheated. Tonight you might feel some sorrow, but you'll give it another go tomorrow. And so again, the cycle begins as you tell yourself, tonight I'll win. And this last one is obviously very topical and is called Roe versus Wade. Judges have moved to legislate, overturn Roe versus Wade in every state. No abortions allowed, no debate, not even if you're the victim of rape or incest, because Republicans know best. For so many women, this is hard to digest. This is a rallying cry. We cannot rest. Do not be fooled by this right-wing hypocrisy. The sanctity of life wasn't valid during Trump's atrocities, separating parents from bairns as a matter of policy. But why stop there? Now they're all experts in embryology. And this law is not about protecting lives or making sure that every embryo survives. It's legislators, regulators, perpetrators, women haters, all trying to make sure that women have no choice, that bodily autonomy is not a choice. If this had anything to do with abortion prevention, they'd be discussing early and continuing sex education, providing free birth control and healthcare for all, harsher sentences for rape with no loopholes. They'd be fixing the foster care system and making adoption more accessible. But this was never about that. Today, a woman's right to choose is something unacceptable.
Excellent. Yeah, it's interesting looking at the choice of 3 poems in each. I don't know if he did that intentionally, but the first one, in each case, the first one is about the happiness you're enjoying at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's so happy that you don't want it to end, and you certainly don't want it to end for him if you die. Naughty wee witch. And then the second one is again about the past. You know, it's different. You know, one is what I remember, but it's the past when seeking happiness, you know, and fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third one, and both of them again seems to relate very strongly to where women are at. You know, obviously imposter syndrome, speaking about that, women maybe feeling undervalued and therefore undervaluing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But in this one, it's much more pragmatic to do with what's going on just now. I wondered if you thought, because I remember reading as well that one of the reasons for all this is there's a huge reduction in white children being born in America.
Yes. My brother actually was speaking to me about that because he was having the same conversation about how, and I saw a woman who had said that this being overturned was a great step forward for white America. And it's basically because they know that more and more white women are not having babies, you know, so what better way to fix that issue than to just say, well, you know, you're not getting birth control.
Shocking, it really is shocking. And I think as well, I remember watching, you all know about the monstrous regiment of women. The monstrous regiment of women was how John Knox described women, particularly the 4 Marys, obviously, Mary Queen of Scots. But this monstrous regiment of women in Scotland, I'm happy to say there's now a publishing house called the Monstrous Regiment of Women. But I watched a documentary in the States, kind of southern states,
Okay.
The group call themselves the Monstrous Regiment of Women, and it was the most frightening thing I've ever seen. One woman after another with like 10 children, dirndl skirt, wee lace top up to here. Their master is their husband.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was not, it was like Amish or Quaker, but no, it was just people who, and they, you know, if they need beaten, they have to get beaten if they don't obey them. And they want the freedom to be the Monstrous Regiment of Women that populates America.
Yeah.
Now there weren't any black women in that group, you know, and it was actually listening to it, it was like as if they had been put through some kind of brainwashing program, you know, the way they were speaking one after another, the same kind of thing. It's very, very frightening. But yeah, that is a very powerful poem, Kimberley. And as you say, so there is what everything you've said there about women getting choice taken away, but then when you watch these women who, for whatever reason, have opted into this strange place where they want to make themselves buckets, you know, for seeds to go in and produce and produce and produce.
Yeah.
America.
I mean, I think that's the thing, because obviously I'm speaking from it from the point of view that, you know, if you want to be able to have an abortion, then you've basically got no choice. But I am aware that for some women, you know, they are choosing the opposite, you know, that's which is their right as well. You know, it's just, I really feel quite strongly about the fact that women should have the opportunity to govern their own bodies and have a choice, you know, in these situations. And I think as well, you know, a lot of people say, oh, you know, I stand with people if they've been, you know, raped or if it's incest or anything like that. And yeah, you know, there's that, but there's also just the fact that, you know, mistakes and accidents can happen.
That's right.
You know, or that, you know, for whatever reason, you can't bring a baby to term, and it shouldn't be a traumatic experience. Well, it's already going to be traumatic, but it shouldn't be made worse.
I mean, I think there's some of these clinics in the past have had people protesting outside them, outside abortion clinics. And, you know.
Well, even I was at a rally in Aberdeen just last weekend, because although people think that, oh, well, you know, it's happening in the States and what has it got to do with over here? Well, in my mind, you know, whatever the Republicans are, the Tories are never far behind. And I know in Aberdeen, we've got an issue at the moment with trying to create buffer zones, because if you need to have an abortion for whatever reason, you'll end up going to Aberdeen Maternity Hospital so that you can get treated at the gynecology department there. So without these buffer zones, you can have anyone shouting God knows what abuse at you when you're already going through something horrendous. And that's happening in Aberdeen, you know, it's...
Yeah, you can, you know, you can lie. I mean, it wasn't an abortion, but it was a spontaneous miscarriage. I've had 2 or 3 of them, and, you know, you're in the ward next to somebody who's just been handed their new baby. And you can hear baby, you know. So actually women going through abortion, that is shocking that it's the same space, you know. It's just unbelievable. Yeah, it's a horror show. But hopefully we don't have the Tories following the Republicans, and hopefully there'll be some sense seen. I mean, I think there's huge protest about it everywhere, isn't there? I mean, there's a huge women's movement over there. But yeah, so it leads us to fun. I mean, you know, that these are the things that can happen. But I think the fun is such, I mean, I think anybody listening to that, male or female, gets it. You know, they know that kind of pushing. And just when you say it, the dopamine drive, you know, how much can you go and how much more will you do? 2 days worth? Just dance and carry on, you know. And everybody, I think, would recognise that. And also, I think the way you read it, it's got the alarm bells all through it, as well as letting us acknowledge we've all been, maybe not all of it, but quite a bit of it, you know.
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, that sort of came off, the poem came off the back of a conversation that was, somebody was doing dry January, and because they were doing dry January, they were reading and finding out a lot more about the effects of alcohol and, you know, how it makes you feel. And they were sort of, I think they were quite shocked, because they were like, oh, you know, do you know, like when you have your first drink, like all these receptors start going off in your brain? And it was like, well, yeah, that's exactly what happened. That's why we're always craving that, the next sort of that buzzy feeling.
Yeah.
And I think as well, for me, I saw a documentary with a guy, and I think he was Italian, and he was saying, Scotland is the only place that I've seen where people just, their whole aim is to get as drunk as possible. Like that is just the end
Yeah.
goal.
Yeah.
And I've been there myself, when it's like, well, it's not a good night unless you've,
You're fired.
not
Wild.
lost a shoe and ended up in a bush. It's
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think there's an age for it, but maybe it's going on too long. I think, the fact that you don't want people back in the cupboards, pregnant or making up their houses. But as things move on, time-wise, people are starting families. If they're having families, quite often they're starting them a bit later.
uh-huh.
And that period in between then becomes, it might be better booze than when you were hanging about parks or whatever, but it's still, alarm bells with a bottle of wine every night between couples.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, and I know lots of people that's the norm, and you just think it's like it seems to be an extended experimental period just to see what they can try now, and it goes on.
Yeah.
And as you say, there could be so many other things. I've never really been much of a drinker, so I've had my moments, I have to say, but it's just never something that really I was too much into. But I just think there's so many other things that you can be doing, as you're saying. The person who stopped it for a month and reading, and not just finding out about drink, but developing yourself. And it's kids do that at a point when their brain's developing. They start at 15, and you start losing these brain cells, I think 23.
Yeah.
And by that time, they've crammed it full of drink.
There was a woman on the news the other day, and she was actually speaking about vaping and how that can be detrimental for you. But she was saying that, your children's brains are still developing up until the age of 25. And like you say, if you're starting to drink when you're like 15, 16, then...
And that is what people do. I mean, the parks are full of the kids, and you don't want to be a pure, oh, that's, enough of that, and you can't do that. But it's just how far it goes. And as you say, Scotland is famous. I mean, I spent quite a bit of time in Spain, and you could be in a pub on a Saturday night in Spain and see a really couple of handsome looking guys in their 20s, late 20s, early 20s, and say to them, what would you like to drink, guys? If they're there with my family, or just a coffee, or a small beer and a coffee. This is a Saturday night at 10 o'clock. Men would get shot for that in Scotland,
I know. I know.
Are you kidding on? What's up with you? They would be abused. They would be slagged silly, which is outrageous. I mean, it's so ridiculous. But anyway, you can see it then when they get older,
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. Poor men are taking a terrible ribbon to that, aren't they? So the last poem I'd like you to tell us a bit more about is The Great Love Affair, which I think is so naughty. It's so naughty. It just plays against that thing. I love you so much. If anything happens to me, I want you to be happy. And you just play the ball right back with that whole thing. I don't.
The thing
I want you to have an ulcer that keeps bleeding in the side of your foot. It's very funny.
But that was a proper conversation that we had, because my partner had said to me, I don't know who had died or what we were watching, but he'd sort of said, oh, but like, if anything happened to you, then I would be sad and stuff, obviously, but you would want me to move on, wouldn't you? And I was like, nah.
I think that's it's brutal, but it's very, very honest. Nobody ever says that.
I am being honest. I have point blank said, no, I want you to just be
in pain,
unbearable grief without me. But it's only because I think I know how much I love him and how much I feel for him that I think, well, if he went, I wouldn't be able to be with somebody else, and I'd no thought of moving on or anything. So
I think it's a very serious topic but it's treated so brilliantly, just all the different things you make reference to, like an ulcer in the side of the tongue and a stubbed toe, because it's a huge kind of philosophical idea, the end of life and the moving on of love and the transference to someone else, and if in the time, philosophy, death, and you've got stubbed toes in there and blisters and all that. I think it's just fantastic the way you've done that. So you make a serious subject very, very humorous, but you're very, very naughty. I always remember a friend of mine when he was unwell, and he's dead now, but he was unwell, and he said, oh, well, you know, she'll meet somebody else, and, you know, blah, blah. And I said, yeah. And he looked at me and he said, are you going to be going out with her and all that? And I said, yeah, if she wants to go out, you know, because she'll be lonely at first. And he said, okay, no dancing. And it was so funny because he was like my very close friend, you know, he's a musician, pal of mine, and he was just like, you know, he's a beautiful wife, you know, no dancing. And he was just honest. He just said, I said, that's shocking you saying that, and you know, and you're in this position, you're saying shit like that. He said, that's what I feel, 100%. You know, when I read your thing, I thought I'm right away, you know. But anyway, so how does it feel to be seeing your poetry so well accepted now, Kimberley? Can I ask how that's?
Oh, it feels unreal. It really does. It really does. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm still trying to get to grips with it and get used to it.
You're not feeling the imposter syndrome, are you?
No, well, I still do.
Oh.
I do still, yeah. I mean, I'd be lying if I said, oh, that's totally behind me and I don't feel it, because I do still, you know, there is times when I worry about my worth and whether I deserve it and things like that. But then I try and just combat it by thinking, well, you know, the universe has worked in such a way that we ended up meeting each other. You know, it's, you wouldn't have invested your time in me if you didn't see something. And I think, yeah, you probably just need to believe in myself a bit more as well.
You do, and it must be, I've seen you at different places. You came down to Balloch the other night and everybody's not stopped talking about it since. And you must have seen that now when you're performing and selling your book, how much people are responding to it. So you just have to let that happen and get the fog away. It's just like a fog, isn't it? Sometimes you have to try and get rid of it so that you can see clear about how well you're doing and how good your poetry is.
Yeah, I think so. And definitely the more things that I'm doing and the more places that I go to, then yeah, it feels a bit more, probably a bit more true, because, you know, like when you're in your sort of little bubble and things and people tell you, oh, you know, that was great and really enjoyed it and stuff, and you do believe them, but at the same time you're kind of thinking, well, you're just saying that because you're my pal. And
but you saw it the other night and you must be seeing that a lot. So,
yeah.
So this book, if you don't have it, folks, it's Granite Heart, and you'll be able to buy that from Seahorse, www.seahorsepublications.com, and you'll see it in the catalogue there. Just ordered a whole load of them, so I'm hoping that you'll buy it if you don't have it, and it's been really lovely. Hope you're enjoying my new blonde hair. I've been travelling a lot, if anybody's been following it, but the hair's going blonde, but I'll be back to its usual tomorrow. I don't know what's been happening to it, the sunshine of Italy and Paris, believe it or not. But anyway, so I would just love to say thank you so much, Kimberley, for coming on Poets Time. You know I love your work and I love to see you perform it. Kimberley's going to be launching the book actually in Glasgow at Avant-Garde in King Street with Joe Gilbert, who's another Aberdonian, and both of these queens are going to be lilting away for us there in King Street, and that's the last Monday in January. So, sorry, the last Monday in August. So I hope you'll come down and see that. 7 o'clock for a 7:30 start. And anyone from up in the northeast, Kimberley is going to be launching the book. And well, she's going to be reading from the book and with Joe. And who is that again? Is that in
it's Wednesday,
the Blue Lamp?
The 9th at the Blue Lamp.
Yeah, so that's the 31st, I think. 31st, is it, of August? Blue Lamp. Watch for that anyway, and that's up in Aberdeen. And I hope all you Aberdonians and people of the Northeast will get along and watch these two thump it out. You'll never forget it, believe me. So I would just like to finish off now and say thank you everybody for listening, and thanks Kimberley for being a special guest this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'll see you soon. I'm coming up to Skateboard
Bye.
as soon as I can. See you.
Bye.
Bye bye. Bye. So I'm just going to say cheerio to all you out there and watch for the next Poets Time.